Dorkos in Weirdoz.
Welcome to the Dorkos and Weirdoz podcast, the show where we talk to creatively strange and nerdy people. I'm your host, Kai Jordan, and today I have the honor of talking to someone who had the gracious opportunity of working on the film Redline in terms of music, as also, we also had the opportunity, a few of my friends and I, previous guests, Martin, Jazzy, and I, had the opportunity to watch the film alongside this wonderful woman on Discord. Would you like to introduce yourself, special guest?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am Veronica Torraca-Bragdon.
And for some of our gracious listeners out there, what is it that you would consider your main profession in this field of music?
Well, I have come to consider myself or view myself more as the songwriter / lyricist. I love to sing. I absolutely love to sing, but I don't need to be the featured vocalist. And so if my poetry or if my words can be used, or if the song that I write, if someone can connect with that and they want to re-record it in their own creative style or add their flair to it, I guess I consider myself a songwriter and lyricist.
All right, cool. And then with that in mind, as I mentioned before in the introduction, my friends Jazzy, Martin, and Stu and I, we watched this film that you worked on, Redline, which is a beautiful movie. If any listeners have not heard of it, it's basically, to sum up, it's basically just anime, hand-drawn racing, super hyper goodness, and some of the best sound design and soundtrack you'll ever hear in film or whatnot. And for any of our listeners out there who may not be familiar with some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, because to be fair, this is somehow a very underlooked movie. How would you elevator pitch this to people? Just looking into this film, dude, if you've never heard of this is something you need to add to your watch list. How would you pitch that?
Oh, absolutely. So Redline is intergalactic racing, and so you see humans, you see aliens, and like Kai said, the soundtrack is just so energizing, and it's just a wild ride, and the fact that it's hand drawn just blows me away every time I watch it.
Right. Yeah. Especially even just there are these moments of there are moments, and you see them especially during the opening race, where the main character, Sweet JP, when he puts in one of those capsule things into his car, everything just stretches up. Nowadays, most people would use stuff if you were to watch a movie say in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is also a very well animated movie, they'd have to stretch that out with computers and all that, which it has its own difficulties to an extent, because you are tooling around with a model while keeping it still on model, but doing that all hand drawn, it's just it's much more expensive because you're drawing a new frame. You have to keep that all in mind, and it really is just something that is a marvelous to look at.
Yes, a lost art.
Yeah, unfortunately. And for anyone out there, how did you you've told the story to us in that call, but for anyone out there, how did you get involved with this particular project?
I was living in Japan at the time, and I have to give all the credit to my friend Andrew O. Jones. He is one of the other vocalists on the soundtrack, and I knew Drew because my husband was an Air Force musician, and so we were in Japan because we were stationed there, and my husband Dan and Drew worked together. Drew was a vocalist, my husband was a guitarist, and Drew was hired for the job, and when he went in to negotiate or whatever, they asked him if he knew any female vocalists, and he and I had worked together because we were he was the director of the gospel choir on bass, and he recruited my husband and I to sing with the gospel choir and help out whenever he was gone or anything like that, and we just absolutely loved that. But he knew I had a MySpace page. And so when he was in the meeting with them, he pulled up my MySpace music page and they said, hey, well, when you come back to record, bring her with. And I happily obliged. And so when I was there in the studio with him when he recorded that, is it Dig the Stones? Might be the name of the song on the soundtrack, because he actually recorded 2 that day, but only 1 got used. Right. And so I got to be there with him, and they showed me the sequence of like the part of the movie where Let Me Love You ended up being on. And so it was just instrumental, and they were just like, okay, so this is the memory montage. And so this is, memories, and we want you to talk about comfort and love. And so I got to hear that and see that. And then about a week or 2 later, I came back and got to present what I came up with, and they liked it, and we recorded it right then and there.
Cool. So with and this being a Japanese production, I'm sure did you have to work with any translators that were able to like get the process going? Because sometimes that can be, especially like with some video games out there. Like I'm sure I'm sure Charles Martinet or even any of the Sonic voice actors can tell stories about like how they have to get direct feedback from clients, and it'd be this back and forth between. Was there any like difficulties? Did anything get lost in translation or anything like that?
We had a slight hiccup as I started recording, but we got over it quickly. Ray, he's also REI, is in the credits of the soundtrack, and he did most of the translating for us. And so the first take I did of Let Me Love You, I just sang it as myself. They hadn't really given me any direction. And then Mr. James Shimoji, the composer, started saying, well, character voice, unique. And so then I was, pulling, from my head, okay, character voice. Okay. I immediately thought of like Alanis Morissette, or even Jewel when she goes into like her baby voice on some parts. And so then eventually Ray said Cyndi Lauper, True Colors. And that was really clear for me. And so I gave it a go, and they said, all right. And they took it.
Yeah, and Lauper is a really good choice, considering like she does have like she just does have like that very exaggerated sound. Like if you ever listen to that Goonies or Good Enough song.
I love that song. I love that movie.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much personality to her music, especially. So they definitely got good taste. I'll say that.
Yeah. And she's a prolific songwriter too.
Exactly. Yeah, like MySpace. That's how long ago that was.
Well, right now is the 10-year anniversary of Redline, and it's been re-released in Japan and Taiwan, and it blows my mind.
Yeah. I wish that. Yeah, I never had I'm jealous of my friends who had the opportunity to see this movie in theaters, like because I think it came out 10 years, so like 2009 or 2010 or something.
I recorded in 2009. It was released in Japan in 2010, and then it was released in New York in 2011.
Oh, all right. 2011. Got it. All right, that makes sense. Because I would have loved seeing this stuff because they have these. Because occasionally we do get anime films in theaters with Fathom events, or maybe just like the occasional thing like Dragon Ball Super when it came out over here, the Broly movie specifically, when that came out over here, it was released for a while. It wasn't necessarily a Fathom event, and they kind of marketed it as a limited event, but it really wasn't. It was treated like an actual theatrical thing, like a regular movie was, which is super rare, but it made a shit ton of money. But
seeing everything on Twitter with all of the Redline anniversary stuff is super cool.
Yeah, especially are there any particular characters in the film that stick out to you, just in terms of look, or just how they're designed, or even just how they behave or whatever?
I actually really like what you had talked about when they pop the pills into the tanks or into the engines, and like that stretching, that seeing that gravitational pull on their bodies. So that's not specifically, naming a specific character, but I just like that aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, that mechanic of animation is very fun to watch. Like so much, like especially that's why I love pieces of animation. One show that I watched for a long time, One Piece, does this a lot because one of their main characters is made of rubber. So like when you see like just the exaggerations used with that, especially when they warp the look of a show, just it can because they're moving so fast that it moves everything around. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
So this is totally a side note, and but have you the live action Disney movies? You just made me think of Aladdin.
Yeah.
I went to go see it because my sister asked me to go see it, and I do almost anything for her. So, right. It was I didn't like it, and not just because it's not the original that I'm used to, but it looked like everything was sped up, and it just looked overly fake to me. So I just didn't enjoy it.
I kind of agree with you there. I was watching a bit of it with my dad, like the first couple minutes, and like once they got to the one jump ahead sequence, I just I walked away because I was like, I know exactly what this film's, because that's I can see why people would think that movie is the least bad of the live action remakes, but even then I still think there's stuff that the animated version can do in spades in comparison, especially like, and again, I've heard great things about Will Smith. Like from what I've seen of Will Smith's performance of Genie, he does a fine job. I'm not one of those guys that's like it's not the same as Robin Williams, dude. They're not. You can't. No, you can't do that. It's like no. Robin Williams. The character Genie was literally made for Robin. Like that was because like. Because he's an improv comedian and he does a lot of impressions. Will Smith isn't like that. He's a dude with a lot of charisma and a guy that can. He's a people person. That's the kind of person he is. But and they made that work to an extent. But the problem is, it just makes you wonder. Like, all right, but that's cool and all that but there was no reason for any of this to be in live action. There's no reason for it.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't add anything.
I have not watched the new Lion King. I have not watched the new Mulan. I didn't even know, like, when I went to the theater to go see Beauty and the Beast, I had no idea it was like a frame for frame live action remake. I hadn't done any research on it or anything. And so I was just like, what is this? So
Yeah. Like, even just the other thing with Disney, with those remakes is just like, the problem is, like, there still seems to be this really dumb, stupid premonition that, like, animation is for children. And, like, people seem to still think that. And then, like, it's also, exactly. And even just, like, and also, not only that, but also just they seem to think that adult animation can only be, like, comedy and stuff like that. They never think of it as, like, it can't be thought-provoking, it can't be anything like that. It has to just be goofy and silly because it's animated and all that. And it's like, there's plenty of that stuff, sure, but if you watch pieces of work that actually try to exaggerate what they are, then you watch that and all that. And but yeah, like what you said about Aladdin before when I was watching it, because I was looking at the way it looks like a stage play when you watch it, and that's kind of what you were saying before about it looking overly fake. The fact that it looks like such a stage play, especially with the set design, the costumes, and all that, it just kind of sucks you out of it. Like, it doesn't make me feel like I'm invested in this fantastical world of Agrabah. Because I watched the animated movie recently, and it still holds up in my opinion, because Agrabah, like, it's just this wondrous desert place to look at. And in live action film, it's just a boring desert. Like, who cares?
It's drawn in. I feel like they did half live action, half animation because of all of the CGI. And so it's like this in between that is not reality, and you can't take it as real because of all of the CGI, but there's these humans there, and yeah.
Yeah.
I just wasn't a fan.
Yeah, and it also kind of makes me wonder, like, and with the Lion King remake, I always wondered this, like, Michael Kovacs brought this up in a live stream that I was watching a while back. He's another voice actor I look up to. And I had this random thought that apparently, like, there was a thought to, like, do it like a sort of maybe a animal documentary style or whatever, and that if they did it like that, that would have been much more interesting. Like, just don't have the animals talk, maybe have someone narrate over it, maybe not do that. That way it could actually
That would
make,
be totally different.
Yeah, like a March of the Penguins style movies. That way,
I was
like,
just
you're
thinking
able to watch
that.
it. Yeah, because it's like, yeah, they look, and it is incredible that they were able to make them look like realistic animals. But the problem is, you have them talk and you have them do all these things to try to quote unquote recapture the magic of the original film. When instead you just make it like it's just the original film again, but not as charming and not as memorable.
Right.
But yeah, that's the thing about, like, animation, like, is a medium that will never be replaced, like, in terms of, like, what it can't do. Like, there are things that you can do with animation that you just can't do in live action. Like, you can't exaggerate things the same way in live action unless, like, you really, like, have a budget that's just coming out of your ass.
Yeah.
But even then, that's why when people are, because you see so many people trying to do live action adaptations of anime stuff. Like, I'll even say this, like, right now, I don't think it's impossible. I thought Alita was a decent attempt. I thought that movie was a fun time.
I didn't see it.
But that's fair. Like, it wasn't marketed very well, to be fair. Like, no one really knew about it. Like, they launched it in February and January, but no one knew about it, and it was just kind of doomed to fail, unfortunately. But yeah, like, just looking at that, like, they're still doing the Cowboy Bebop thing and all that's like, all right. And though, to be fair, one franchise I think that could work in live action, and I think would maybe be like a mecha series like Gundam or something like that, because it does deal with giant robots, and Pacific Rim was like that to an extent.
Right. Well, you made me think of Matrix.
Right.
And Redline actually has a tie to Matrix in that the Animatrix, one of the segments, was directed by the director of Redline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Yeah. That's another. Admittedly, I've seen the first half of Matrix. I haven't finished it just because I was watching it with my dad, and at the time I had something else to do. And I wanted to keep watching it, but I just kind of lost track of it. I do have to keep watching it later, and
Well,
it is on
maybe
my
that could
watch
be
list.
one of our movie nights.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
The whole
yeah.
all four of them or something.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of time.
Yeah, it would. A lot of whoa to be had there. Yeah. So and as before with you in our so like as like in our earlier conversations, you did like talk about like how you would travel around the world a lot in your time, because you said you lived at Japan at the time.
Yes.
And I'm not sure where you currently reside. Nebraska? Is that what you said?
Yes. I'm a Nebraska girl. Nebraska is
Right.
my home. My dad was also military. And so I was born in New Mexico, and then we moved to Spain, and we were there for 4 years, and then we moved to Nebraska. And so I lived in Nebraska from first grade all the way through 7 years of teaching. And by then I had met and married my husband, and we had our son. And then we moved to Japan for 3 years. We got sent back to Nebraska for about 6 years, and then we got sent to Hawaii, and I just moved back, like officially, you know, there's a big story about COVID in there, but I officially moved back to Nebraska in July of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially with just like those big changes and stuff, I'm sure like there are like adjustments that you have to make, especially like having a kid, like adjusting, like growing up in one school and then having to realize, well, we got to move, we got to go to this area, and then that's a whole adjustment for them. Is there like, are there any like is there anything you find personally enjoyable about like these traveling experiences, and are there any like drawbacks, like adjustments that can be really tedious?
Absolutely. So, the advantages, I love going somewhere new, seeing something new, learning something new, seeing their culture. And I guess my favorite part is the food, like tasting. And I feel like food is one of my love languages. And so, just getting to experience that is wonderful. Drawbacks would be, of course, the cost. And then sometimes language can get in the way, of course. In 2000, I was on the university choir I was in. We traveled to Europe, and we happened to be in the Czech Republic, in the city of Pilsen. Because they were celebrating like the liberation of their town by the Americans during the World War. And so we had some free time between performances, and we happened upon this little museum that used to be a monastery. And none of us spoke Czech, but somehow, some way, we figured out that the tour guide spoke Spanish, and I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I speak Spanish. And so she led us through the museum. She would speak to me in Spanish, and I translated to my classmates. And so we got to go through this old monastery in the Czech Republic. And then I got to go sing in the Pilsner Urquell brewery. So that was a really cool experience.
Right. Yeah. Like that's something I always, in terms of traveling stuff like that, I do like appreciate when I do get the chance to go to a new location, because I remember the first time I ever did something like that. I've never traveled outside of the U.S. just because I still don't have a passport yet, and but I have like visited different parts. Like when I first went to New York for the first time, that was an enjoyable thing, especially with seeing the toy store, the Toys R Us, Times Square, when that was still around, when they were still in business. Like they had that big giant Ferris wheel and everything. And even going, I think I went to Nevada at one point, Vegas, where they had this hotel. I remember like, I keep, even back as a kid, I would always think back to like, they would have like these like they had these weird boat rides and stuff, like these little things like Little Venice, I think, or whatever.
Yes, at the Venetian.
Yeah. And then they'd have, and one of the hotels we stayed at, they had this little, they had these little buttons you could press for like, it would say Nickelodeon on it or whatever, and it would start playing SpongeBob on it. And then of course, like being a kid, you'd always see the casino machines, like the slot machines and stuff.
Yes.
Like as a kid, you think that's just like a joyous carnival game, but in real life, that's it's adult. It's like, oh well, it is a game, but real money's involved. There's a reason why you have to be 21 to do it. So, but there's that, and even in 7th grade, like I traveled all the way to Washington D.C. because our class had the opportunity to do that or whatever. It was an interesting experience. Even had got to see some cool things. Got to learn a bit more about our history without sitting twiddling our thumbs at a school table and all that stuff, reading a dumb textbook.
Yeah, DC is definitely on my bucket list. So there are places in the States that I definitely want to get to, and DC's on the top.
Yeah. It's pretty nice over there for the most part when we were going on our trips and all that. The other thing, what else was there? Especially but the thing that always kind of had me worried though is like, as a voice actor, I'm thankful. One thing I'm kind of thankful now that we're utilizing remote location, and I'm hoping it's utilized for the future. Not always, just because I still want to record in booth if given the opportunity, but like I want it to still be an option, because back then, like before people prioritized home studio recording, if you recorded, say you got a job for a Texas anime, right? Okay. And you lived in Los Angeles, you'd have to, 9 times out of 10, you'd have to fly all the way over there to record in studio. and I'm pretty sure that would like add up in terms of your costs
Definitely.
because you have to pay for the ticket, and then you have to maybe you have to find someone to stay with for a week,
Right.
and if you couldn't do that, you'd probably have to get a hotel room, and then you go in to record your thing, you finish that, and then you fly back, and then you record, and then it just starts again.
So it's not all included in your fee? No, just kidding.
I would not know that because I haven't done that yet, but it's mainly from like stories I've seen in interviews of people that would go off and do that stuff. But I'll say this though, if I were to ever book a role in one of my favorite anime shows, like say I don't know, maybe if it was just like a random role in My Hero Academia or maybe One Piece or something like that. If it was a big, not just like guard number 1, I ain't flying all the way over to Dallas just to do that.
You need a name.
It's like, yeah, exactly. If it was a big name like that, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do this. Like, cause like if it last week, all right, that's worth a plane ticket. I fly my butt over there. I ask my friend to say, hey, can I stay over here? I'm recording the thing because I can't say because NDA, but if I do that, that would be awesome. But otherwise, that's a pipeline. Again, gotta keep the budgetary reasons in mind because you never know. Because the other thing you're risking is if like you do that, you might be losing out on work at home. So
True.
Just be careful.
Very true.
But speaking of work, one thing that came to my mind when doing this discussion when I was having this interview, because like any other artist, musicians hone their craft to do what they do, learn as much as they can to try and like improve. Like they have like sometimes they have a gifted ear or gifted skill in a certain instrument or vocal skill or what have you, and they take lessons to try and hone that and whatnot. How would you describe your training?
My undergrad is in music education, and so I took formal voice lessons all through college. I taught elementary vocal music for 7 years here in Omaha. But during that time, I was also performing locally with all of my my original music. I don't think any of it actually is on YouTube, which is interesting. Right now on my YouTube, I have other originals that I've recorded at home. But when I was really getting into writing, I would say about when I was 24, I just was reading every single article I could find on musicians that I admired or that I wanted to emulate. And so at that time, that was like Counting Crows. So you're making me age myself, Kai.
I tend to do that. I mean, to be fair, I do that to a lot of people because I tend to be the youngest boy in the room, usually, being the 24 lad that I am. Mm-hmm. But anyway, were you about to add anything else?
Just so and reading who their influences were, so that I could read up on them and get to know those influences as well. So as far as training, I didn't take any more lessons, but I was also teaching private voice lessons. I was teaching private piano lessons.
Right.
And so that brought about me like really listening to Joni Mitchell and the Beatles, of course, and yeah. And so I just and also at that time, I guess training, not necessarily formal training, but I had a really good friend who was a poet, and so I was considering myself a singer-songwriter at that time and not a poet. And so to support her, we found this open mic night and we went to go check it out just to see if it was anything that she wanted to pursue. And we loved it. And I actually ended up being one of the co-hosts for that, that open mic poetry night, or Yeah. And so that,
Yeah.
I guess we would give each other assignments, like a weekly type of theme, so that we could always be trying new forms of writing or new topics or anything like that. And that bled into when I moved back from Japan, I wasn't teaching yet. Because our son was young, and so I actually started working karaoke again. And so I guess singing, I kept up my voice by singing so much karaoke.
Yeah, of course. So another thing about being a musician or even an artist in particular, one thing that I tend to notice, this also has to do with this. If you go on Twitter or anything like that, one of my biggest pet peeves for any artist in particular is when they're like, it's fine when your work gets, in my opinion, I think it's cool when your artwork or anything like that gets attention. But one thing that kind of pisses me off is when people share their stuff and they don't even tag them or even give them credit. And they just say, this is a thing, I like this. And they don't even bother linking the person at all. And it's the most annoying thing in the world. Like, I even called out a dude for doing that, and they tried to clap back at me. But then they looked at the Instagram page where that artist came from, and they immediately deleted their reply because they knew I was right. Mm-hmm. So, in that regard, what would you describe are the biggest highlights and lowlights to putting your content out there? The reception from people who view it, but also the drawback of the possibility that people will probably just steal it and put it somewhere else and not even credit you.
Well, I would say my personal biggest drawback is lack of traffic, I guess,
right,
or lack of feeling like anyone sees it. I say that I put it out into the universe, with the hopes of like I said earlier, that it doesn't need to be me singing it. It could, if another artist wants to record it or anything like that. But that's the drawback, I would say. More recently, I absolutely have to give a shout out to Martin for I haven't been as active. I've never been as active on Twitter as I am now, and it's because of being in that F-Zero anniversary show and getting to be connected with fantastic people like yourself.
Right. Yeah. And then even just working, having small opportunities like that, with networking and putting together projects such as that, you can learn a lot from the community, what they're really into, or even just especially I remember when I was first getting into VO, one thing I learned, most of the jobs that I booked were because of a very gracious two gentlemen, both of them Devin Mack and Bill Butts. If they were very very talented people, very helpful people in guiding me through this industry and teaching me new techniques and how to properly read copy and stuff like that. And then it was because of them that if it wasn't for their keen eyes and ears, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now. So community people, anyone who does work within this industry, they are willing to help if the chances are there,
Absolutely. And I had opportunities like that as well. When we moved back from Japan, an old college classmate of mine, he had a community choir, and so I wanted to keep my chops up, and so I joined the community choir. And there happened to be another one of our college classmates that was also in the choir, and his degree was in composition. And so, I have poetry, and he asked me if I happen to have anything. And so now he's taken 3 of my poems, and he set 2 for choir, And then the most recent one was he took a sonnet of mine and he paired it with a poem by Willa Cather, who is another Nebraska poet, and he set it for choir and orchestra, and it was premiered for the celebration of Nebraska's 150th birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, that was in 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't get to, I wasn't here for the premiere. I was in Hawaii, but my parents attended for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
You were there in spirit.
Yes. Oh, and so that composer is David M. Gardner.
Cool.
Yeah.
So in regards to that, with poetry, this discussion of poetry and stuff like that, how would you describe like your taste in music? Like, what music just inspires you and just what annoys you? Like, I'll even out myself by like saying that my favorite band is the Gorillaz, and
I love them.
Yeah, and one of my guilty pleasures, even as a kid to this day. I don't like all their songs, but I kind of have a soft spot for the Nickelback song. This is how you remind me, because purely out of nostalgia. Purely out of nostalgia, because I grew up listening to it as a kid. But if you listen to all their other songs, they sound the same.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, I don't know why people hate on Nickelback so much. I mean, there's lots of jokes out there about them, but you got to give them props. They made the money. They're on the charts and everything. So, or were.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
But so my current obsessions are Old Dominion and Sarah Bareilles. Old Dominion, they just seem so accessible to their fans, and they have just such a great sense of humor. And I like their backstory in that they were songwriters, and they all moved into Nashville and were just writing songs that so many other people recorded and made into hits, and then just they had their opportunity, and now I think third year in a row they've been nominated for Group of the Year, and they even have Song of the Year. So I did get to meet them, a paid meet and greet type of thing.
Yeah.
But I got to meet them, and we got to talk about songwriting for just a second, and that really meant so much to me. So I have that picture hanging in my basement with them.
Cool.
And then like Sarah Bareilles, just like just so good. I think what gets me for both of them is the lyrics and the melody. So when those are combined, that just it's my soul.
Right. Yeah. I wish I knew as much about I consider that's why I consider myself like a casual music fan, because I don't literally the only band Gorillaz again is the only band that I know like the backstory for how the characters' personalities and stuff like that. Like if you ask me a single thing like, what do you know about the Beatles? Yellow Submarine's pretty cool. I know that Ringo sounds like Wacko a little bit.
Yes.
In Maniacs. That's all I know. I can't like name off if you ask me anything about Imagine Dragons or anything like that, I'm just gonna stare at you like a complete moron, because I'm like, I mean, I like their songs. I don't know anything about the singers at all. But yeah, no, I could name I know that that Murdoch is a confirmed Satanist. I know that cursed he's cursed to be immortal or something like that. Considering that or he made a deal with some kind of boogeyman or whatever to be immortal. Considering that over time, when you see if you compare to how he looks in Phase 1 to how he is now, his skin gets more green because he's literally rotting, and or even how 2D. The reason why 2D, the blue hair guy, has 2 dents in his head and 2 blank black eyes is because Murdoch hit him with his car once, and then he made him eject him out of the car again. And I know that Noodle, best member,
Noodle, the reason why she reason she has a mysterious past and all that stuff, and also just I know at one point that she was replaced by a robot, but until she came back again. I could keep going on with that stuff, but yeah, no, that I don't know anything else about. I don't know anything about Green Day except that their music's cool. I don't know anything about AC/DC except their song is cool and one of their singers died.
Right.
That's all I know about that's where my music casualness comes from. So there's that.
Gotcha. I have I think 2 Gorillaz DVDs. All
right.
I'll go look at them after this. I'll take pictures and I'll show you what I got.
Cool. Yeah. Because I know they've done there was this one theater event that they did I can't remember
That's
what it was
what I
called.
have.
Reject the Icons? Is that what
Oh
it was?
no, I don't. The one that I have, I know they're performing in a theater and then they have puppets up
okay.
in the box as well.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that was a theater event I wanted to check out, but I couldn't because I think I was just busy with schoolwork at the time or something else like that, or maybe just work in general. But yeah, just anything anytime when a Gorillaz album drops, it's like Christmas. It's good. But is there any kind of music out there it's just any kind of music out there that plays over and over that's just that turns into an earworm? It's well, I have to listen to that I guess I'm stuck with that song for the next couple of weeks, and it's just do you ever have that one song that plays on the radio that you're just not into but everyone just obsesses over? It's this is gonna be a thing for the next 5 months, isn't it? All right,
right. Cool. Okay, so that song for me, I think would be If It's Meant to Be, It'll Be. What was that? BB Rexa and Florida Georgia Line. So that came out I think that was 2018, and that was
Okay.
over and over and over again. But then current my husband just got home.
No problem.
A song that I've had on repeat lately is Good Things Fall Apart by Illenium.
Okay.
That's my jam right now.
Wow. Yeah. I think the last time I heard a song that would play over and over, I remember when Big Time Rush was a big thing, my sister would watch it downstairs on Nickelodeon. It's just I would hear that song play over and over again. I'm I'm sure they're nice guys, but I'm just I'm so tired of hearing that theme song come and shake it out, what you gotta lose, you gotta give it up with the life you choose. I'm stop, please, enough. I don't care.
In high school, so Counting Crows, I had mentioned Counting Crows, loving them so much.
Yeah.
My favorite song of theirs, and I love performing it too, was Round Here. And so I would put that on repeat, and my dad would. He has Adam Duritz, their lead singer, has a unique voice, and my dad would just say that it was screeching, and he'd be round here, type of thing. And but then they came and visited us in Japan, and they got to come to one of my performances, and I got to perform that for them, and so that was nice. And I prefaced it with, my dad used to complain that I listened to this song too much, but now I'm gonna sing it for you.
Oh god, one thing I would do to one of my parents to annoy them, because you know how the AC/DC singer will often have that loud screechy voice.
Yes.
I would do that I would just imitate that just to going down party time, just to annoy them, just drive them crazy. I like to shoot the thrill.
That's really good.
Oh my god, it's screeching how he days will do that. Because if you hear him speaking, it's funny because when you hear that guy speak in normal interviews, he sounds pretty alright. But it's when you hear his voice has got to be roasted because he's always just and I'm gonna go. It always sounds so.
I can't even attempt to do that. My throat hurts listening to you.
Yeah, just sounds like all those characters. It's just like a troll voice, a troll in D&D learning how to sing. That's what
There
it is.
you go.
So you've also mentioned before, if you're not comfortable talking about this, like just for anything like that, we can cut it out. You also mentioned in some of our conversations, like that you worked as like a special education teacher and with stuff like that. And speaking as someone who has had speech therapists before, this piqued my interest, especially considering that I'm on the spectrum and stuff like that. So, what was the learning curve behind this particular occupation? Did you have to be like? Is there anything in particular when you're working with special needs children that you have to understand compared to others, like to make sure that they're not stressful or anything like that? Just because some teachers, especially like back in the earlier 2000s, didn't seem to understand that like some kids just they're not interested in the lesson just because it just doesn't pique their interest and stuff like that. Do you ever have to learn anything behind that?
Definitely. So when my son started kindergarten, that's when I started substitute teaching. And I quickly learned that I did not want to be an elementary music teacher anymore just because it was exhausting, and I don't know how I did it for 7 years because it was like a constant performance. But so then I had a little bit of background with special education with my undergrad. Like you had to take a class with, my pedagogy classes. But on top of that, I started babysitting when I was in 8th grade. When I was in 17, I worked for like an after school and summer care program. So I was with kids then. And then when I started substitute teaching, I did all grades and everything. And I also realized that students were just different. And I believe it was because families were different. I had been away like 5-8 years from actually being in a classroom every day. And so just on a whim, I accepted a special education substitute job, and it went well. I had nothing to be afraid of, and so I accepted more and more, and eventually I became exclusively special education substitute. And I think one of the reasons was because when I had seen that students had changed, like with the special education students, there was still this like almost like an innocence or to them, and they still found joy in simple things. And so that's why I started pursuing my master's in special education. But the biggest thing I've taken away from being a special educator is that everyone is unique. And if you meet someone that is on the spectrum, then you've met one person that is on the spectrum, because everyone's abilities and strengths are different, and you have to find what that is and celebrate that.
Exactly. And I asked just because like I watched like this really well-made video by a dude named Made to Express about this one Simpsons episode called Bart Gets an F that basically just like goes over like what's wrong with the U.S. education system, like just showing like, because here's what's so messed up is like we as like children get so worried, like they have genuine panic attacks over a letter. Like just like they get so stressed over like getting like a letter grade, something like that. When really and all that stuff, like because like it's really a lot of these things. It's just like especially when you're. Now, I see this now, especially even like I always thought it was kind of BS, but I just went with it when I was a kid. But now I think it's even more now as an adult. I think it's bullshit. Like just like they give you reading comprehension tests. Like they say like reading is fun and all that stuff, and it's just it's the most tedious, and I'm sure it is for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I envy people who are able to read chapter books, but I just don't have that same passion because they would always test your memory and they would always do all
Right.
this stuff with, because that's the thing, like, it would be fun to do that because for me personally, I enjoy reading when it's with like a book club or if I'm actually able to like engage with people rather than, just like what would really annoy me is if I'm by myself and I'm reading a book that I don't care about and I'm not invested in the characters and I can't immerse myself in what's going on because it's just text on a piece of paper. And unless I have like some kind of visual stimulus, like say what a comic book does or a picture book, especially it's just. But there's also this weird social thing that like if you're at a lower reading level, if you're struggling or whatever, people are like, what's wrong with this kid? Why is this kid like everyone else is doing fine? Why is this kid behind? It's so messed up.
Yes. And the hard part also is that in everyday life you're reading constantly.
Yeah. All the time.
Yeah. And so we have to stress the importance of it, but I don't think we need to necessarily stress the what was the author trying to say here? How was this character feeling? I mean, if you find that interesting, that's great, but I don't think we need to like force that on people. What's the deeper meaning in this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And I say that because like my son, I grew up loving to read, and unfortunately going through grad school, I haven't read anything for pleasure, like a fiction or anything like that because of grad school.
Yeah.
But like this entire
exactly.
time, my son's 13 now. For 13 years, I've been trying to instill a love of reading for him. And recently we were like talking about his like English grade or something like that. And and he loves history and he does really well in social studies. But he was just kind of struggling in English. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? He's like, well, history is like the facts and that's real but with reading a story, you have to interpret, and then there's just so many characters that you have to interpret how they're feeling too, or what are they trying to say, and like you said, like the just like the remember stuff about the plot and things. But
exactly. The comprehension tests usually make it difficult, especially because like I know like even back like when I was a kid, I had to take a bunch of those. Like they would assign us like a day to read like a couple pages. I would read them. I would go in one ear and out the other, and I would instantly forget it, and then I'd have to take a comprehension test, and then it was just such a pain. Yeah. Like, there are ways to get into it. I feel like what really helps though is like if group reading sessions really help, especially just because people are able to invest themselves in it a bit more, and they're able to. I feel like when children don't feel like they're alone in the process, or unless they're introverted and that's okay with them, but if they're more extroverted and they need that community to help them get into it, then usually like maybe book clubs and stuff like that, helping them feel like they're included in the process, then usually that can help at times, in my experience at least. That's just my takeaway with reading. With stuff like that, plus also the other big thing that was really a struggle with me in school that's always been consistent was math and other stuff like that. But we have those in our life, and people would always like give you crap for like not showing your work when you're doing your math and stuff. When really you don't, in real life you don't do that anyway. And I feel like that can apply with maybe like art though, because with art, you do need to show your work because you can't just trace your references because then you don't learn anything.
yeah.
So there's another common sense there with drawing. That's where that can apply. But with math, it's like if you show your work, no one cares because it's like math changes all the time. It's like that clip in Incredibles 2. It's like, why would they change math? Math is math. Right. They always change it. I don't know that way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely
that's
have
like,
those moments.
yeah. When I'm a father Sunday, I dread when I have to help my kid with math, because it's like I didn't grow up with that way. I don't know any of this. But there's that. So before we close this out, one question I ask to many of my guests before we close things out is this: after we whether in your creative life or your personal life, was what exactly was the most difficult thing you've gone through, and how'd you overcome it?
Two things come to mind. They're both personal life, but the first is being a military dependent, a military spouse.
Right.
So moving away from home, moving to foreign countries, or across the ocean, it's such an adventure. It's such a fantastic opportunity. We've made lifelong friends that we still talk to this day, and you have to learn how to create a family or a network when your parents aren't right there, when you don't have immediate family right then and there. So that was really hard, but fortunately family came and visited us, or we had the means to be able to come home and visit too. So that's really hard. And I think I mentioned the other night when we were watching the movie that like all but 5 or 6 years of my life I've been a military dependent. And so I don't really know how to be a civilian, but we're doing it now because my husband retired from the military. The second thing would be I have some chronic health issues stemming. One is called Tarlov cyst disease, which means that I have non-cancerous cysts growing on the nerve endings in my sacrum.
Oh God.
And
Jeez.
so
Sorry.
it's all good. Thank you. But it's all good. They so there's sometimes there's numbness in my extremities, or just uncomfortableness. They're not big enough to operate on, and I don't really want them operated on because of the possible side effects. Like if they burst, then more could grow. And then I was diagnosed with arthritis starting when I was 10, and so just these chronic pain conditions. And I was in physical therapy on anti-inflammatory medications, and I struggled with my weight for a really, really long time too. It's like my whole life until I would say 2018. That's when I found keto, and I went keto, and it's very anti-inflammatory. And so I've been keto since 2018, and I healthier and more energetic than I have ever been in my life. But there were times when I would just have to be in bed. I would do what I could in the morning, but then by the afternoon I had to be in bed because I was in too much pain. So
right.
Yeah. And I'm still a delicate flower, but I just climbed Hole in the Rock or something like that in Tempe, Arizona, 2 days ago with my sister. So I'm out and about.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry you went through a lot of that. Because I know a lot of a few of my friends, some who I've played D&D with, who have had struggle with similar health issues. I know one of my friends, she is diagnosed with PCOS and had to deal with a bunch of that crap.
Yeah.
And even just many of the people in this in California, or even just Texas, anyone who has to deal with just the really bad weather conditions, or stupid people making things harder.
Right.
Stuff like that. Because and thank God that areas in our places are like opening up for like vaccines and stuff. Because I got my vaccine like 2 days ago, or 3 days ago actually. That had its granted, the process with the vaccine had its side effects. Like it felt like being bitten by a radioactive spider. Like the second, like because I felt like I got the shot. Okay. Then I was feeling all right. Then the headache started coming in.
Ooh. And
then later that night, so many things hit me at once. Chills, started shaking violently.
Oh
no. Fever, like it went up crazy. Strength, what's that? Well, and then so that was something. But hey, on the bright side, those side effects are basically now behind me, and I feel like a refreshed.
Awesome.
I feel super refreshed, and I feel cleaner. I'm still gonna wear a mask because
yes.
I care about my environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's that whole thing.
Yeah.
And all that stuff.
I'm anxious to get it because I want to see how I feel, because I did get the Rona in November. So
right.
I'm anxious to see how I'll be affected by the vaccine.
Oh yeah, that's right. Was it like with that having the Ovid as other people, as the Rona, as we all said, was it also just like high fever, chills, pains and stuff like that, or was it just like a mild case? Or
I had it super mild. I did lose my my smell and taste, which for, like I said, food is my love language. So not having that for Thanksgiving was torture.
That sucks.
But otherwise, I had I woke up at like 2 a.m. and started throwing up and had an awful headache. That was like 2 a.m. And then once I woke up for the day, I went and got a rapid test, and like that was it. And then I was absolutely fine from that day forward. Yeah. Except for I still had the loss of taste and smell. That lasted about 2-3 weeks, but yeah.
Yeah, those are the things that are the worst when you're sick. Like when your body feels cold when you know it's not cold,
mm-hmm.
or even just like when everything you taste tastes like shit, like just the worst.
Nothing. It was just nothing. And in my head, I'm like, I know exactly how this is supposed to taste, but yeah.
Yeah, it's like it feels like someone injected your personality into a robot or something. But hey, maybe in the next coming month, hopefully in the next coming months, you'll be bitten by the radioactive spider that is the COVID-19 vaccine, which is a vaccine, and anti-vaccination is bullshit. Don't do that stuff. Go get your shots. Do it.
Yes.
Sorry, I just had to.
No, you know what? Again, being a military dependent, we just basically just did, and we had to get our and everything, and I am going to get mine. My employer is offering it. It's just that I was not available for the times that they offered, so I'm still on the list, and I will get it as soon as possible.
Right, radio, and with that powerful health PSA and all that stuff that we have here, ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap. Actually, hold on. Okay. Before we cut that.
I also want to say, wash your hands. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Exactly. Where can people, Veronica? Where can the listeners find you in the world?
I am on Twitter, VTBmusic16. I am on Instagram under the same name. I am on Facebook, and I have my YouTube page as well, Veronica Torraca-Bragdon, or VTBmusic16.
All right, cool. Yeah, go do that. Support her content and send her some love for Redline. Special education, what have you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap for our show. Thank you for listening, and remember to wear your strangeness and dirty heart with pride. Take care.